There we go. So I'm going to hand over now to Deborah to take on the session. My video will switch off and I'll handle the chat function. If there's any questions, please note that they will be picked up.
Hi, good afternoon all. Just about to share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So my name is Deborah Skyers. I'm from Meraki Consult. I'm joined by co-founder and partner Sejal Patel today, and we're here to talk and talk about change. So a little bit about Meraki Consult. So we're a boutique and consulting firm, and we focus predominantly on organizational change, management, tech and assurance. We've got extensive experience delivering services for the employability industry and worked delivering those contracts and worked with various commissioners. So you can see our assurance services and advisory services specifically for the employability sector. And we'll talk about how you can contact us later on at the last end of the actual presentation. So we're going to explore change in terms of what do we mean by change and what change means to you. We're also going to look at the 3 stages of change and how important they are, and precisely what change management is and what change leadership is, and also how to engage and create an energized change culture within your organization. We also know that recently we've moved over to Restart, so there's been a lot of change within a number of organizations, some newcomers, as well as old, in terms of starting a new contract and what that involves. So change culture is an important subject for us now. So what do we mean by change? So take a bit of a moment and think about what change means to you in terms of how it makes you feel or what you consider change is. And just pop in the chat box 1 word in terms of what change means to you.
Got uncertainty, Deborah, uncomfortable and familiar, doing something brand new, difficult.
Interesting.
Innovation, creating new opportunities.
I like that, a bit more positive. Innovation, creating new opportunities. Anything else? That was really interesting, Sejal. The first.
Oh, and essential, sorry, Deborah, and essential.
Essential, innovation and transformative, really positive, really productive energy there. Uncertainty, what was the second one after that?
So we've got uncertainty, unfamiliar, uncomfortable, doing something brand new. I've just got something through challenge positive as well.
Okay.
Which is interesting because, as you said, it can be a positive thing.
So there's a lot of emotive and emotion attached to change.
Yeah.
The unknown, the uncertainty, and there's also a possibility for innovation and transformation. So, yep. And there's no wrong answer or right answer. That's what it means to everybody. And they can be all those things at any given time. But ultimately, we want change to be positive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people relate or link it to feelings in particular when they talk about change. It's that what you just said about those comments being sort of emotive, because that fear of the unknown is about uncertainty, and it's how you are made to feel, right, in terms of the change and what that means to you and how it's going to make you feel, or what it means in terms of the future.
So let's see if we can tackle some of those feelings and how we can best manage that today. So we'll move on to the next slide. So this is what change means to me, and there are 3 aspects of it. The first one is improve. Sejal, you can cover this one.
Yeah, so this one is to do with doing things more efficiently. So if we relate this to sort of the work that you're doing currently, or work of any organization, it could mean, as an example, process improvement, reducing delays in process, improving, the time spent in actually processing, say, for instance, a payment of some sort to supply chain provider or, a customer, be it something that, they've asked for. So improving is about actually improving the way you do things, be it, yourself or the organization to support, for instance, your service users.
Okay. And I want you guys to think about how you're feeling when we go through this as well, and we'll recap again at the end of this slide. Another aspect of change is optimize. So, and that's when an organization's got a real handle in terms of what they want to do, and they no longer want to just do things and be busy and just do things. They want to do the right things, the things that are relevant, that are required for the business. So you might see changes like automation of the business process, using tech to enable the organization to no longer do things, with a physical person. So automation, it might be a new business system or software. So it's thereby freeing the individual up to do more important things. That's when you optimize the business and you focus on doing the right things more effectively.
And a third element to this is transformation. So doing things or doing different things, sorry. So for example, an organization diversifying, moving from just delivering employability services to delivering learning and skill services, or increasing or expanding their portfolio to include another part of a service, another service, for instance, retail, into their portfolio. So doing things differently is actually, doing things very differently, moving, expanding your reach, moving, in a different direction, to transform the way you do things and what you do.
And we see a lot of players within the employability sector doing different things. So we've got improve, optimize, and transform. So all these words, how do they actually make you feel now that you've read and understood what they actually mean? This is what change means. Do you have the same feelings? So again, how do you feel now that you sort of read these three elements of, or the three stages of change? One word, just to encapsulate what you're thinking or feeling.
So we have intrigued, positive, amazed.
All right, good.
Lots of positive steps. Right,
so we can see once you begin to understand the different types of change, your feelings change along the way as well. So that's interesting. So we'll delve deeper and explore further as well. So there are 3 stages of change. We've spoken about what change is, be it improve, optimize, and transform, but there are specifically 3 stages of change that we'll also look at today. So the first one is raising awareness. So this is if you have a change to implement, be it a system, process, a piece of software, the first thing you need to do is to consider, how am I going to raise awareness that I want to make a change to the business? And one way is really identifying your change agents or change champions and get their support. These are your first followers. These could be departmental representations, key people in a company, organization, office. You can invite them to early briefings. You can keep it formal, but also informal conversation about change is very powerful. So having a conversation with a key person by the coffee machine, using the office grapevine is really good. If you can find one or two, you all know there's somebody in the office that is in touch with everything that goes on in the organization, the office. Tap into that person and use them. And that informal grapevine is powerful. So that's raising awareness. The next phase is creating interest. So you've got your first followers on board. There's an element they're aware of the change you're proposing. So it's about captivating their interest. So WIFM, what's in it for me? Explain the benefits. This could make a difference to the way you work. They'll be thinking this can make my life a whole lot easier, and get them on board and interested in what you're proposing. The next stage is...
Sorry, Debs, I was going to say, you know, interest is also about excitement within the organisation, and the more interest you make, you know, the more excitement there is around sort of the change or the newness of what's coming, you know, be it a new process or a new structure, etc., within the organisation.
Yeah, and there's ways in which we can do that, and we'll speak about communication and the important ways of doing that. The next stage is after you've created awareness, you brought some followers on board, you've created that interest, people understand the benefits and what the change is. The next thing is that you want them to adopt the change, ultimately, not just be simply interested. You want them to use, whether it's a piece of tech, whether it's a process, you want them to do it. And that's adoption. Whether it's a process, system or tool, that's change, and you've made the change. So an example of following this process, I was CIO for an organization, and we delivered a digital transformation program, and we put in a whole stack of tech, and we had unified comms, and back then it was Microsoft Teams, Jabber, etc. The adoption rate was really low. So I got my team to go out and say, look, they're not aware, they're not interested, they've got their brand new laptops, they have the tech installed, but no one's logging in, no one's using it. So the team reluctantly, but they enjoyed it eventually, went out to every single centre, and it was an employability organisation that I was working for at the time, and it was an ICT roadshow, and they went out with our third-party supplier, our tech provider at the time, I think it was BT, and ran these roadshows, and they demonstrate the use of Microsoft Teams, Jabber, they would link up with other centres, and they were able to generate that awareness and create that interest. And that process enabled the full use and adoption of Microsoft Teams a few years back. And that organisation survived really well during the COVID years, because in terms of culturally, they had adopted the tech and they'd got used to the behavioural changes involved with using unified comms. That's an example of how you can really raise awareness, get out there and talk to the people. So
another example I suppose I can give, Deborah, is one around sort of audit. So my background is very much assurance audit. So it's a subject agenda that's very dry to some people, some organizations. They see it as, you know, something that see it as a negative as opposed to a positive. And when I worked for an organization a few years ago, my role was actually to change not only the structure of the assurance function itself, but the regime itself. And this was across not just the organization, but across the whole supply chain network, ensuring that, you know, we were meeting, or at least aware of, you know, the gaps and, you know, what's working well, what's not, against DWP requirements. And the approach I took was to get buy-in, and I worked systematically through sort of the departments within the organization, by providing them with, you know, a plan in terms of what I was going to do, but also getting them involved in actually shaping what the regime was going to look like, and, you know, talking to them about sort of the pain points, and using that then to gain adoption and get people on board. I also shared good practice as well as progress. So, you know, where they initially got a low score or low assurance level, how, you know, the implementation of the regime and the embedding actually then improved their scores going down. That created excitement. We had a league table, you know, things like that to really get people excited, interested, on board, and you know, continue to share also progress in terms of new contracts that they've won, new businesses that they've won. And what had happened essentially was that, you know, from being a team that no one wanted to see because, you know, it was to do with compliance and assurance, we were getting phone calls from organizations, supply chain, asking us to come in and conduct a review because they saw the benefits of it. And that's what we did. We focused on the positives and the learning rather than the negatives. And that's how we were able to get people on board. And what we did do was move from not just, so we started off with, I think it was work program at the time and work choice contracts. We extended because it was such a big hit and you know, the organization could see the benefits and they had visibility in terms of, you know, intelligence and insight. We expanded our reach from just work choice and work program to then all other contracts and then the whole organization. So, you know, it can, if you get this right and, you know, get people involved, you know, it can really, really change things dramatically in a good way.
Excellent, really good example. So to reiterate, first stage is to create awareness and identify your change agents and get your first followers, who in turn bring along others and continue to bring interest and build that. And as they begin to adopt change, the more people you bring on board, i.e. create awareness and interest and adopt, there's a tipping point. And that happens in every organization. And it's between 50 and 70% of people that adopt. At that point, everyone will follow. And that's tipping point for you. So awareness, interest, and adoption. Now, again, I'm going back to the feeling stage now. How are you guys feeling about the 3 stages of change? How does that make you feel in terms of if you were to undertake change and go through this process? I haven't spoken about project management, just simply raising awareness, creating interest and adoption. How do you guys feel? One word?
Makes sense to follow a framework like this. Anyone else? Clear. Make the change seem less daunting. Yeah, structured approach.
Yeah.
Doable. I think, you know, it makes, I mean, it's interesting, the less daunting thing, because I think change can be overwhelming. And, you know, the thought of actually getting everyone on board and you know, addressing the challenges can be quite daunting. So definitely resonate with that one.
Okay, we're going to watch a little video that demonstrates this framework. Okay, so couple of minutes. Hopefully it will work.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. See, it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is over-glorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
Right. And we've all been that lone nut in some shape or form. So I just thought it was a really good example to explain why we need followers and the importance of it.
Absolutely, I love that video.
Any more thoughts coming through? I can't see the chat or not.
Yeah, check. Any thoughts, observations on the video?
When they're asking to take a shirt off at work, I think you've got support.
Helen just said, so amazing how that happens so naturally. Yeah.
And that is change, that, you know, and it works. It's a principle like the law of gravity. It happens if you get it right. So we're going to just take a look at what is change management. And again, we've spoken about what change is. So what is the management of change? Distinctly different. So I've put together a few principles of change management. You know, when people think of change management, they think of project management, MS Project, Prince 2, implementation planning, risk actions and issues and decisions. Yes, it's all that, but it's an operational focus. It's on the grassroots, on the ground, doing what needs to be done to make the change happen, an operational focus. So it does draw primarily on tools, and I've mentioned some project plans, processes and practices, risk management, you know, being able to put together a plan to support the vision, translating that into a set of objectives and actions and tasks and allocating those to people, creating a communication plan for leaders to deliver. So the communication of the change, the benefits, etc., when things will happen, how they will happen, who's involved, and how responsive they are to the change requirements as well. It also involves the identification of risk and issues, because there are some risk and issues when you put together a change plan. There are things that may go wrong. Have you mitigated them? There are some issues that come up. How are you dealing with them? Are you delivering the change plan on time, within scope and within budget, because things can get out of hand when it comes to spending. So that's change management principles. one of the things is to also recommend, this is a new change to the business. What are the KPIs associated with the actual change? What is the measurement for success? How do we know the change has worked?
So would you say, Deborah, that this is all sort of tactical? It's tactical, kind of focused.
Very much so. And that's the management of change, making sure the change that has been defined is being delivered correctly, risk are being identified, financial matters, for example, are being managed so you don't run over budget, we've got adequate resource, the change is embedded, it's been transitioned well, it's been received well, there are benefits that have been identified and you've realised them. And there's a transition to BAU, business as usual. You've made the change and then you transition it to BAU. It's no longer a change, it's business as usual.
And who would be involved in this process? Would it be, because you mentioned project manager, for instance, right? Would it be the project manager themselves leading it, or a number of people from across the organisation?
Change management would be a team led by a project manager or program manager. And that team could involve work streams from across the organisation or just within a small department. It really depends on whether it's interdepartmental or change within a department. So it's a team of change agents working together using tools, methods and practices to complete various tasks, to initiate a change, embed it, and as we said, ultimately get the full adoption of the change at a tactical level. Any questions on change management, or are we clear on that?
Any questions, comments, or observations? Anything new? Anything that, you know, surprises you about change management you didn't know? No?
I think it's pretty straightforward, and I think a lot of people consider this is the crux of change, but that's not all. It is to change as well in terms of the management.
Just got a comment from Helen, Debs, sorry, quickly. She says, makes sense, never been at the lead of change management.
Okay. And again, I think anyone can do it. I think it's having a framework, a point of reference, and the tools to, you know, to use to manage change. It's not something where I'm not a project manager, I can handle a change. I think there's certain principles that anyone can deploy without necessarily having Prince 2 or, you know, MSP and whatever. I think it's basic common sense and having that point of reference. So we've spoken about change management, and so change management is predominantly about tools, practices and methods. So first is that, what is change leadership? And I'll throw that question out again. What are your feelings about what is change? What's the difference? What's change leadership?
Okay, so when introducing theory of change, you could then use these principles to apply it. Okay, so this, I think, is going back to change management, devs. And then Dahlia, sorry. All organisations have to adapt and change, but it's not often that we can identify the process so clearly. That's very true. Thank you for that. So on change leadership, any thoughts on change leadership?
Can I just go back to the theory of change question? I didn't actually hear it fully.
Okay, so this is when introducing theory of change, you could then use these principles to apply. It's a question.
So say it again, Sejal.
When introducing theory of change, you could then use these principles to apply it.
Yeah, so this is, I mean, change management is the application of the definition of change. I think the theory of change is about identifying what change needs to be made and the reasons behind it. So that's a definition cycle. Change management is the delivery cycle.
Okay.
Now, what's change leadership?
So change leadership, any thoughts on what change leadership is? Helen says change leadership, the person who starts it all off. Any more? Or finishes it, Abby says.
Okay, so the change leader, the nut in the shirt, or without the shirt, I would say. So let's have a look at what we've said. So the principles of change leadership, and you're right, it's a strategic focus. So they create the vision for the future. But the change management team, they translate that into something that's realistic and achievable. And that's a feat in itself. So the leader creates the vision for the future in terms of, we want to transform and start delivering new services for the organization. We need a certain amount of capabilities. How are we going to do that? Do we start training our staff, or do we acquire organizations rather than take the time to, or waste time building capabilities? Why don't we just buy a company that has that capability? As an example, they select a team to support the new vision. So it could be putting together a steering committee, for example, or a project team, or a program board to instigate what's been defined and who will deliver it. It's important the leader recognizes and delivers key messages to inspire and motivate not just the program board or steering committee, but the entire organization, because that's an important factor of leadership. And again, escalates risks and issues that may arise out of check whilst the change is being managed, and remove those obstacles to realizing the vision. And in addition, endorses the recommendations, and this is a change, these are our measures, our new KPIs. So good change leadership is when you regulate yourself during change as a leader as well. So, and there's probably been times in my life, for example, where there's been uncertainty, but I think it's about how you regulate yourself, not letting your own uncertainty affect you and then affect your team. That's also an aspect of good leadership.
So is that like, Deborah, being self-aware?
Absolutely, as well as self-aware, but awareness of others as well.
Yeah.
So regulating yourself as a leader, being aware, actually, I'm uncertain about the changes. How am I, or what climate am I creating for my team? And how can I regulate myself to lead my team through this change?
Yeah. Good leadership is also, I mean, we just saw the video about creating a movement, but creating a movement under ambiguity as well, right? Certainly able to motivate your team under certainty as well. Someone who captures hearts and minds. I mean, we've both worked for a CEO in the past, right? Who was able to do that seamlessly, you know, was very charismatic. And, you know, at the time we both worked, the organization, we went through a lot of change. There was, you know, new contracts, contracts coming to an end. We had, you know, we were acquiring businesses, and, you know, we had also an international element to it. So there was a lot happening across the organization. But this individual was able to take everyone along with them. Right, and that's very rare, right? That's not something that I've seen in the past, and you know, today, you know, this individual, something about this individual, the individual's aura, the warmth they exude as well, and they were able to get buy-in very quickly, and they were visible throughout, weren't they? They were open in terms of had an open door policy, so you know, they were available for questions. You know, there wasn't anything that they shied away from, and that style of leadership really worked at that time. And I think, you know, during you know, times of uncertainty, a different style of leadership is required, right? Yes. It's not just performance based. You're actually looking at you're trying to read the mood. You know, you're focused on the people. And you know, it's about motivating people, you know, through that change or uncertainty in terms of period.
Absolutely. And I think that individual, I think, was open, transparent, and there was real, honest, authentic communication. You knew the change agenda.
Yeah.
And it was, if you didn't know how it was going to get there or what's going to happen, you'd say, I don't know. I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
I think it's about being honest about what the change, why we need to change, what the agenda is, but it's also about authentic leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. Just got a comment from Helen. Communication is so important. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, communication can help influence others positively, and being sort of open, transparent, and communicating regularly, but at the right time, and also providing the right messages. Communicating the right messages at the right time is really important, to get buy-in, and positively influence not just your staff, but also, you know, your stakeholders, those that have a vested interest in that change.
Absolutely. So that's change leadership principles. Starkly different from change management, but we're going to try and pull those together. So if we pull them together and compare, so
I've just got a comment, sorry, before you jump in, from Sue. Gives people more confidence if leader admits they don't have all the answers yet, rather than hidden agenda. Yeah. Dahlia says absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I've seen it every time as well. So in summary, if we compare change leadership and change management, one is a strategic, high-level, holistic approach. Change management is the operational approach. Change leadership identifies a change, and change management ensures a change is delivered in the right way. So change leadership defines change. Change management delivers the change in the right way, in short.
I love this slide because it just clearly articulates, you know, sort of the difference and the focus in particular, you know, of both elements. I think it's a great slide for any organization, anyone, you know, looking to understand more deeply the differences, you know, to use. Yeah.
And I think it really highlights the importance of leading change, as well as simply saying, I want to change. It needs to be led. And we also need followers, as the video said as well. So we're going to move on to another slide, but are there any questions on this slide? Anything coming through before I move on to the next slide?
Nothing coming through.
Okay. So we're going to talk about an energized change culture. So we've spoken about the 3 stages of change, what change leadership is, what change management is. And now there's another element. So there are 3 elements required for change. Yeah. So we've got a 3-legged stool here. So we've already spoken about change management. So the tools, methods, practices. We've spoken about change leadership, creating that following, being inspirational, being motivational. So for change to happen successfully and for it to stick, you need a 3rd leg. Otherwise you've got an unstable change that's not going to last. There is another element. So the other element is an energized change culture. So
should we throw it out there?
Yeah.
To the participants. So what does an energized change culture mean? Talked about change management and change leadership. What does energized culture mean to you? Have you heard the term before? Okay, Helen says people who embrace the changes. Amy says positive overall attitude towards the change. Abby, buy-in for change.
Yes, all very correct. Love it.
And Dahlia says properly consulted people.
Excellent. All correct. And we'll delve into that. Okay, we're going to delve into how we can create that. So you get that you can't have one without the other. You can't have the change leadership without change management, but you also need that culture, and we're going to go deeper into what an energized change culture is. So I want to talk to you about organizational energy. So it's a term, and we can define it. The NHS Institute has said that organizational energy is the extent to which an organization has mobilized the full available effort of its people in the pursuit of its goals. I'm going to say that again. The extent to which an organization has fully or has mobilized the full available effort of its people in the pursuit of its goals. That's what organizational energy is. There are 4 different types of organizational energy, okay? Not all good. Now, any high-performing organization wants their people to be in the upper quartile. So we're talking about the productive energy. Now, productive energy are people that embrace change, they have the energy, they have the, they're inspired, they're motivated, and they're delivering and firing all cylinders. And you've probably got some productive people within your teams, and you know the difference. They're productive. You go, if there's something needs to happen, these are the people that people go to. These are the people that deliver, no matter what. Productivity. You've also got the lower quartile, people that are comfortable. So people that deliver their KPIs, they do their jobs, they come in at 9, leave at 5, competent, they tick all the boxes, but they're comfortable. And maybe a little concern when changes happen because they're happy with the way things are. They're very comfortable where they are. Still positive in terms of quality. It's not, you know, sometimes being productive is hard to sustain. Sometimes you might have to, you know, a couple of weeks being comfortable and then gear up again and being productive. So these 2 quartiles, productive and comfortable, are not necessarily negative, and they're positive in every sense of the word. You've then got the lower right quartile, which is resigned. These are people that have already left the organization. They're there in body only. They're doing the bare minimum, if that, and they're not engaging, they're not interested in anything that goes on. They're demotivated in every sense of the word, demoralized, and they might as well leave the organization. Quite negative, quite low energy. If these people don't leave the organization or move over to the right-hand side, they can become corrosive, toxic, destructive. That's when you start hearing about grievances or disputes within the organization. A really negative place to work, a toxic environment. And you may or may not have met people like that. Any questions?
Nothing coming through, Tabs. I've got one question.
Okay.
So, well, it's a comment from Helen. I've been around toxic people who resent change. Yeah. Yeah. I think we all have.
Well, first of all, it's organizational energy. So there is an element of accountability and responsibility for leadership in terms of leadership determine the energy within the organization. It's about effective staff engagement. And I think to develop that shared vision, it requires clear change leadership, effective change management, a range of activities, you know, for staff to ignite the source of organizational energy, because it can change. Mm-hmm. You can change energy. You can change a corrosive person to become that productive person. It's not entirely their fault. You know, there's a responsibility the organization has to take in terms of the culture of the organization. So let's look at the sources of energy, things that can ignite and change that. So we'll look at the sources of energy. And we'll put them into context, and we'll try and provide examples of how we've used them as well. The first one is connection. People need to really link themselves and their values and their work to the purpose of the organization. I think when people are looking for jobs, for example, they'll look for organizations that have the same ethos and beliefs they have. So I think it's important that people can connect and understand the impact an organization has. What are your thoughts on this, Sejal?
I was going to say, conversely, people start a job, based on sort of the decisions around salary, but you find that a lot of people tend to stay within jobs when they connect with the organization.
So good for staff retention.
Yeah, it's, their values align with the values of the organization, and they're happy, motivated, and that's the reason that they stay in organizations.
Okay, just good connection, good staff retention. Excellent. Yeah. Another source of energy, another C is content. So working stimulates and provides a sense of achievement. There's job satisfaction. I'm helping people get back into work. I'm content with what I'm doing. I'm making a difference.
Yeah, performance is the other thing. I'm achieving something. As you say, everyone wants something out of what they do, or it's about purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, seeing their work as fulfilling and serving a purpose, being able to help a client, not just getting a job, but actually changing, transforming their life. And that sense of purpose is something that keeps people in work and can change someone from the left to the right quartile.
Another source is context, and this is I've got a good example on this in terms of the working practices support and enable people to do a good job. Prime example, I was asked by a few years back, I think, well, quite a few years back actually, I was asked by my CEO to go down to a region that was underperforming, and at that time he always gave you 90 days to do something. So I had 90 days to go down to this region and sort out the performance and make the change. So I went down to the region, met the team. There was no leadership or strong leadership in place at the time. Very low performance, very low morale. I would say most of the team were in the resign box and a couple of them in the corrosive box. So I had 90 days. So what I realized was, and this was a region that was delivering a contract, a work choice contract, and they just changed from work step to work choice. And all the staff delivered work step, which was a very different contract. So they're now delivering work choice and failing dismally. Not good at all. What I realized was they didn't understand the context of the contract and what they were doing. Their work practices weren't aligned to the contract. The mentality and the way they thought was aligned to the old. They hadn't made the transition to the new. They hadn't made the change. So I thought, right, I'm taking the entire team out for the whole day. They're not performing anyway, what's a day? And it was a contract walkthrough day. And I took them through the entire contracts from start to finish and explained the difference. And there were some really good team members actually in that team. And what I also did was a champion challenger model. So I asked them to either champion the change, this is the change, this is the contract, this is what we're going to deliver, or challenge it. And it was simple things. For example, it was transparent. There was things like, okay, if you want to understand performance, let's have a simple regional dashboard available for everyone to see the performance. Also, there was a challenge around if, for example, a client wanted a job and they needed to access £20 for travel or to buy a shirt, the actual process to access money was so long and laborious, it was too late and they were missing opportunities. So simple process was, okay, you can have there's a cap on what you can have £50 to £100 to help a client. And I put in a quick workaround, got the process. But we worked our way through the contract and put aside work step thinking this is a new contract. And we closed every single door of excuse. And there were some changes on their part, and there were some changes in the organization part.
Mm-hmm.
That team became the highest performing team in the business. And I would say every single one of them were in the upper quartile. They exceeded my expectations. And after 90 days, I was able to leave them with strong leadership in place. And they were a high performing, motivated team with inspirational leadership, because they were simply given the context of what they were doing, and their working practices matched that.
It's amazing, right? So just understanding, right, where they fit in, what they are there to deliver, what their job is, can make such a huge difference. Not just sort of the contract in the context of a contract, as you described it, Debs, but also the context of the organization.
Yeah.
It's really important for people to understand that. And a lot of people do question where they fit in, how are they part, or how do they contribute to actually delivering something in terms of, strategy, for instance, or strategic objective. Operationally, sometimes it's a lot clearer for you to see, because you're actually part of the outcome, right?
Yeah.
The degree of the outcome. But there are departments across the organization that don't have a direct impact, indirectly do support, like HR, finance, which can cloud things or make them question what they're doing to actually support that end outcome, what it is that the organization is looking to achieve. So it's really important to actually provide context, not just in terms of the role, the contract, but the organization itself.
Absolutely. And the last source of energy that you can ignite is climate. So this is how the organization helps people to grow, achieve their goals, and get the best out of their people.
Yeah. So climate, for me, certainly, Debs, is also around environment, the people, values, standards, policies. It's all that is used to actually help people understand what they do, where they fit in, but also around the learning side of things, right? So it's learning and development. So giving people sort of the opportunity to stretch themselves, to step up perhaps, and grow within the organization, do their best within the organization, and feel that they've been sort of nurtured and developed and are growing as the organization grows.
And I think someone that, for example, is comfortable, if they're given more responsibility and you're recognizing their strengths and giving them exposure at top level and visibility and the right tools, yeah, they may be motivated to become more productive as well. So these are the different sources of energies that we can utilize and tap in to create a high productive, high performance team as well. And I've seen it work. It's a great framework, and we've seen it within the development of our own teams as well.
And I think it's worked for both of us, right?
Absolutely.
It's not something that we've just pulled out sort of when we need it. It's something that we lived by and breathed, and made sure that we did continuously, throughout our careers.
Mm-hmm. Any questions coming through before we move on to the
final slide? So no questions, but I did have a few more comments. So okay, Helen, I've been around toxic people who resent change. Dahlia, to what extent can the change manager or leader contribute to toxicity?
Contribute?
Yeah.
Or alleviate? What's the
contribute.
I think if the change manager doesn't utilize the source of energies, they can become toxic. If the leader is not authentic and open and transparent, that can drive people the opposite direction. So I think the principles that we highlighted for both management and leadership are critical. So it's important to deal with yourself and regulate yourself before you take anybody else. You can't take anyone where you haven't been. And you have to be that example and be exemplary in your behavior to get the respect.
It's leading by example as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. You have to respect the leaders within the organization, and they have to be not perfect, because no one is, but be honest about it. I think
honest and transparent. Yeah. Sue, if more in the productive, comfortable, the toxic quartile often then do decide to move on and leave, which is positive for the organization.
Yes, because that's that, you can help and support them improve their performance. You can help them support them out of the organization. That's another question about effective performance management. I've had people thank me as they resign. So it's what's good for them and for the organization, and there's ways to do that effectively as well and authentically.
Dahlia says, I think you are answering my question, Debbie. So I think that was going back to the question that she asked.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
So great. So any comments or observations or questions on this slide around energized change culture? So what we've just talked about in terms of connection, content, context, and climate, and how that can actually help move people from sort of corrosive, resigned to productive, comfortable. No, nothing at the moment, Debs.
Conscious of the time, so we've just hit 1 o'clock. So the last slide is really a recap on what we've done. So we understand the difference between change management and change leadership, strategic and operational. There are 3 stages to change: awareness, interest, and adoption, and the need for followers to make that change. And to create an energized change culture, it's essential, a crucial aspect is to ensure that you have change leadership and change management as well, in a nutshell. So let's just have an open for any questions before we close. And just to note, actually, we're offering a limited number of free leading change sessions to IEP member organizations. So if you're interested, give us a call. It's an hour session on change if you want to delve more into change for your organization and your decision maker and within the organization as well. Any questions before we close? Happy to answer any.
Abby's just said apologies, she needs to dash off, but thank you. Really useful and interesting content. Helen says really interesting topic, thank you. Amy, thank you so much, really informative and interesting. Kerry, great session with lots of information and ideas.
Thank you.
That's it, Debs.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, very interesting. Sue, very useful, buzzing with ideas now. Great.
Brilliant. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn the recording off now.